Check out the Sustainability Expo Europe October 1st and 2nd in Amsterdam. 500 plus expert speakers. Use a code SESustain20 at checkout. Get 20% off. But there it is. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Sustainiacs. I am Michael Vincent. I'm always the Sustainiac. I found a new victim, Sustainiac. His name is Nelson Switzer. He just happened to be in front of his computer, and I hacked into it and got into his video, and I'm holding him hostage to do videos, brother. You say I stalked you a bit on LinkedIn. Welcome to the show, Nelson.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Pretty good, actually. It's had a good night last night. Not a terrible sleep. It's a beautiful summer day, so I'm feeling good.
That's fantastic. Where are you at? You're obviously not in the Carolinas anywhere, right?
I am not. I'm based here in Toronto. That's
okay.
Just north.
Yeah, they got that tropical storm Debbie just sitting on top of them and just hammering them with rain over there, flooding like crazy.
Just unbelievable, which is probably apropos for the discussion we're going to have today about climate and climate investing.
Yeah, we are. Okay, fantastic. I had no idea. I just literally turned on my computer and you're standing there.
Yeah.
And I saw Nelson Switzer in the corner there, so I was like, I stalked you real fast. Are you the Nelson Switzer, the Gigacorn Hunter?
The sounds ominous, but yes, I am Nelson, and I am a Gigacorn Hunter.
Well, see, now there you said a Gigacorn Hunter. I was thinking like you were the singular only one that was out there. It wasn't like you were the Paramount Hunter. I don't want your head to get too big. Like that is the one. No, but there are multiple Gigacorn Hunters. I didn't know this was a sport. Is this a Canadian thing?
It's not a Canadian thing, and it's actually kind of I think there's a moment of a funny anecdote about it. So a Gigacorn Hunter is essentially somebody who is looking for climate investments that have the capacity to exceed $1 billion valuation, while also being able to deliver at least 1 billion tons or a gigaton of carbon reductions. And years ago, I was speaking at a conference, the Milken Institute conference, and on a panel on climate investing. And this young family came to me after the panel, and they were very anxious to know where to find climate investments. How could we do it? And so he essentially said to me, "So you're hunting climate unicorns?" And it was a great question, and it took me a pause for a second, and I thought it through, and I thought, well, hold on, a unicorn is $1 billion valuation. A climate unicorn doesn't really ascribe a volume of carbon. So, if it's $1 billion, it should be 1 billion tons, because that's what we need when we're looking at this 60 billion ton gap per year.
Yeah, to move the needle, for sure, right? A ton doesn't cut it, right? A ton doesn't do it. Even 1,000 tons doesn't make it happen, right?
It certainly doesn't. So I pulled that together. I said gigaton plus unicorn, and I thought gigacorn. So a little while later, I actually put out a tweet, and I said, like Gigacorn Hunter, and I defined it. And then a gentleman from the UK tweeted back and said, that was a brilliant definition when I invented it. And so I responded, and I said, well, good for you. That's fantastic. So to answer your question, I am absolutely not the only one. My part of my ambition is to build an army of Gigacorn Hunters, an army of people around the world with the relevant knowledge, skills, expertise, financial backing, so that we can invest in the transition to a low carbon or decarbonized economy.
I got it. That is fantastic. And I love it. What I mean, you were speaking at a conference. Were you already investing in these things? Were you already doing this, or was that the inspiration to make this happen? How did that come about?
That was the marketing inspiration. But no, I've been doing this for quite a long time. This is actually my 25th year in this market. When I was in graduate school, I got a master's degree in environmental engineering focused on sustainable development, which I can tell you at the time I graduated, when people would ask me what I did, they would think that's the ultimate degree in vagary. But it turns out that it's useful. But in graduate school, I chiseled out this purpose, if you will, which was to leverage the capital markets to solve the world's big and intractable sustainability challenges, climate change certainly being foremost among them. Water, food security, social equity, and so on. And so I've spent the last 25 years either advising asset managers, working directly for them, working within corporations and or consulting companies, investing in and or advising the investment in climate tech or climate mitigating or sustainability companies. There's so many monikers for all these companies. Nick Parker, who defined the term clean tech many years ago, that was the first, I'd say, major incarnation of this.
Clean tech.
Mm-hmm.
And that I got you. So you're going out and researching this company? Are now people coming to you? Is this totally outreach looking for these? I mean, are you actively hunting still? And how did that transition? Has it changed, I guess is my question. Are people more and more coming to you saying, "Hey, I've got an idea," or are you still searching on the search? Because that would give
Yeah,
an indication of maturity of the market too, right?
yeah, it certainly does. But I'll say the truth is anybody who has an idea is always looking for investors. So as soon
Sure.
as you put up a flag and make a declaration that you have capital to invest, I can tell you the influx of opportunity, the depth of the pipeline here at this fund that I co-founded and helped manage called Climate Innovation Capital. It is outstanding, the deal flow that we get just from an inbound perspective. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't do outreach as well. We do. We look for trends in the marketplace. Where do we think we're going to see the greatest areas of opportunity for growth, for decarbonization, and for profitability? So yeah, the inbound is pretty spectacular, but we certainly do a lot of outbound as well.
I got you. I know I was an inbound. I saw your thing and I just texted you and I said, I'm your next Gigacorn. Turns out I'm not, but we are talking on here. Yeah, micro recycling of plastics isn't gonna get gigatons of out of it anytime soon. But it's a worthy
But
cause.
that's it. It is a worthy cause, and it's a very important one, and one I have spent a great deal of my career focused on as well. But I'll tell you, because I'm interrupting you, so rude because you're the host. But
No, it's fine.
there's an important reason, which is understanding the definition of a gigacorn, or let's call it a climate technology.
Yeah, because
And
I did not, and that's why I hit you up and said, "I'm your next Gigacorn."
yeah, and believe me, it happens all the time because people we're passionate, we're empowered in an emotional sense, and we believe it, right? I
Yeah.
actually have this lecture that I deliver that says intuition won't solve the climate crisis. And
Mm.
what I talk about in that is the notion of how important it is to actually use the data to measure and understand what you're measuring. And so you might believe, because it makes sense, that a technology will decarbonize some segment of the economy, and it may in fact do that. But without the analytical data, you can't really prove it. And so I have a methodology. The acronym is CQM, or Climate Tech Qualification Model. And it includes three elements. It includes the total carbon that you think this technology is going to be able to remove or avoid,
Uh-huh.
how fast that's going to happen, and at what price. Is it actually affordable and scalable? So when somebody comes to us or to me with an opportunity, that's the first thing that I try to do is calculate those three pieces. By maintaining minimum thresholds for each, like a minimum carbon reduction potential, I can very quickly determine whether that's something that belongs in our pipeline or not. If you don't hit that minimum threshold, you probably don't belong in the pipeline. You might be a spectacular investment, you might be a great opportunity, but it's not right for the Gigacorn Hunter in my case.
Yeah, and so it's CQM, right? Is that what you said?
Yes,
And that
Climate
stands for
Tech
what?
Qualification Model.
Climate Tech Qualification Model. And and I get all of that. What do you think it is? It's almost like, what is your total addressable market? What is your how
Exactly.
much of that can you get? But the last part is really the important part, right? And I mean, and that's why you're here, because I know a lot of missionaries, right? And they come around every once in a
Mm.
while, and they're trying to raise money to build Christian schools or hospitals, et cetera, in developing worlds and all this other kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
This has been how, like, your green pieces of the world and certain things have in climate control and environmentalism and that sort of thing has been before. Now it's investment. You are an investment person. That wasn't always the case, right? It was altruistic in nature. So that how much money is it sustainable is incredibly important in order for it to be a sustainable business in the true sense of the word sustainable, not the environmental sense of the word sustainable,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Well, it's right. But the truth is that they are one and the same. So let me give you a little bit of history here, because I think you hit on a great point. Uh, Often when I have discussions with people, I'm trying to compel them to invest in our fund. I have to raise capital as well in order to invest it. And there are a lot of people that I've approached who said, yeah, you know what, we took a real bath in the original clean tech, back in the early 2000s, and I don't want to get in that again. And I every time I hear that, I'm kind of inspired to hear that they recognized it, because what happened with clean tech was people developing solutions that solved environmental problems, but they didn't necessarily do so in a way that was solving a business problem, which meant that there was little market potential for it. The demand for it was very limited. So you
Hmm.
had these wonderful technologies, but no demand in the marketplace. So they were destined to fail from the beginning. What we look for is technologies that have not just that significant decarbonization potential, but also the demand for it. And those two things are inextricably linked. And by having that, you can start to model out what the potential profitability of these companies will be. That then allows you to say, this is an opportunity that will be truly sustainable, as you've said. It delivers the environmental performance that you're after, because we have a climate clock that's counting down and we must beat it. But
Yeah.
it also delivers the sufficient uh, 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 profitability required, or revenue and so on, so that it can self-sustain. Otherwise, it's just philanthropy. And obviously, there's a huge place for philanthropy in the world, and there's lots of wonderful work that is done there. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to help support companies that can develop long-term sustainable enterprises that can decarbonize the economy. We have to replace and re-engineer and reinvent everything in the economy if we're going to decarbonize it. So it's finding the right solutions that can help do that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're using those analogies and saying otherwise it's just philanthropy, which is, I mean, we're beyond that now, right? We've got to get we've got to make actual things happen, is what you're saying, right? It has to be a truly impactful business model in order for us to
Well,
reach those goals, and that's what you're
the way
looking
I
for.
often say it is, the time for small moves is over. It
Yeah,
is big moves only time if we are going to solve this problem.
really, because I've always argued that even if you can make small moves, it at least helps. And we got to get to those big, journey of 1,000 miles starts with a couple steps, right? But I guess
Mm-hmm.
time's running out. We've got to make that leap, right? The monster's on the other side of the void, and we've got to jump it and stand in the middle and say, "You shall not pass," right?
Yes, I think that's true. But remember, we're not just at the beginning of it, right? This is something that has been going on for decades, work that has been done for decades, research that
Yeah.
has been done for decades. So we are at that point now where these opportunities are better positioned than they ever were. There's a whole series of myths that have been overcome by the climate tech industry.
Okay.
Um, Climate tech doesn't perform as well. Climate tech solutions are more expensive, and if you go through that long list, everyone has been debunked. Look at the light bulb as a perfect example. 10 years ago, buying an LED bulb for your house would cost 5 times as much as an incandescent. You couldn't use a dimmer switch on it. The light was too bright. It wasn't human and warm. Now, an LED light bulb for your house costs the same or less than an incandescent bulb, if you can still find an incandescent bulb, and it's dimmable, and it comes in all sorts of different colors, and all sorts of different shades and brightnesses. And not just that, it lasts 20 times longer and uses a fifth of the energy.
Yeah,
The
and you
value
can get a
proposition
really
is
cool
exceptional.
remote control for it too.
Yeah, there. That's true. That too.
Right. I mean, you can even hook it up to your Wi-Fi and program it,
Which is pretty sweet.
which is pretty sweet. But yeah, there is, and that's part of the things that I really wanted to bring to light with this discussion is there are still leaders of industry out there that consider a sustainable effort within their own company to be a drag on their core business. And that doesn't have to be. Do you get
No.
involved in any of that stuff, or have you been involved in that type of work with companies that are not necessarily a sustainability company per se, right? They're not in the business of getting rid of it. But when you talk about some of the larger logistics company, there's, speaking with the people at JB Hunt, 50 million gallons of fuel a
Yeah.
month they're
Yeah.
blowing through. That's a needle mover.
It certainly is. That's a needle mover. That's a market maker on the price of fuel. That is a market maker on the price of transportation, on the miles, on the tires, on you name it. So I've got so many pieces. So let me answer your first question. First question is, have I ever been involved in that stuff before? Yes. I've been the chief sustainability officer with Nestle and Nestle Waters. I was the head of environmental affairs for the Royal Bank of Canada. I was the leader of the Sustainable Business Solutions practice for PwC, advising all of these companies. So absolutely. And in that, I developed a process that I call social license to grow. And essentially what it is it's a management system for sustainability where you empower companies to understand and acknowledge the impact that they have on environmental and social issues and how to let's say reverse them and or neutralize them. That's the first, right? The second is, how do you go further? How do you then restore the damage that your operations may have caused over the legacy of your enterprise, of your company? The third, I call it be seen doing it. It's actually coined by a friend of mine, Afdel Aziz, who's got a series of great books out there. But the notion is, don't do it in a vacuum. Use these opportunities that you have built to enhance your company's value proposition so that others will be inspired to do the same. I did this at Nestle and it was very successful. And I've advised a whole host of other companies on the same. So that was your first question. To transportation specifically, I'm so glad you brought this up. And I don't know whether you're just handing me the softball or not, but here at Climate Innovation Capital, we've actually invested in a technology in a company called IdleSmart. And IdleSmart is a brilliant device that is installed in long-haul trucks. So basically, as you probably know, trucks idle a lot when they are parked at the side of the road because for many truckers, that is their home as they are traveling. So they're sleeping in the back and they need to be comfortable. So the air conditioning is running or the heat is going, whatever, depending on the season and the jurisdiction in which they're in. Well, this device very simply turns the truck on and off. It's kind of like a thermostat for your truck. By doing so, truckers are able to save up to $50 a day by using this device. So it delivers huge energy savings. We're talking about the diesel fuel that you do not have to burn because you don't need to be heating and cooling your truck at all times. So that type of solution for somebody like JD Hunt is a terrific opportunity for them to adopt a climate tech solution that helps them reduce their energy costs, their diesel, and improve their environmental performance. So you've got the both pieces of the solution to me, which is what makes climate tech. It's something that delivers that environmental benefit and also delivers a profitable opportunity for a business. So it's solving a business challenge while managing an environmental issue.
Yeah, and those type of technologies and in that space. So 36 years in logistics, and that's why I brought up the logistics portion of it. So It wasn't a softball, but I'm glad it was because I mean, honestly, we want people to realize that there's things out there, right? And
Of
show them
course.
just because when you start talking about gigatons and all this other kind of stuff, they start thinking, oh well, crap. They immediately envision these massive,
It's too big. Yeah.
machines, et cetera, and all this
Yeah.
stuff. This is an idle thing, which I would hazard a guess is quite small and non-invasive, really, to that thing because you can't just
Really.
put that you can't just put anything on a Daimler engine or a Cummins engine and expect the warranty not to be voided, right? So it has to be pretty high tech, but it also has to be fairly non-invasive and that type of
These
stuff.
are
So
very non-invasive solutions. They
yeah,
are well entrenched in the industry, and it's a business that's growing. To your point on what people envision. So one of the things that I have come to realize over the last few years is that when I talk about gigacorns, people do immediately, like some people do feel overwhelmed.
yeah,
And what I also realize is that the economy isn't built in billion ton slices, right? Like I mentioned earlier, the 60 billion tons really we have to pull out of the economy, 50 billion from the economy in terms of what we emit, and 10 billion of legacy emissions that are in the atmosphere we need to pull out every year. And so that the logic would say, well, if we find 60 gigacorns, bang, we've solved it, right? How fantastic. Go out and do that. But the truth is that the economy is not, because the economy is not built in those billion ton slices, there are megacorns out there. There are millicorns out there. And we should be hunting for those. There are decacorns out there, right? So 1,000-ton reducers, 100,000-ton reducers, million, billion, and 10 billion ton reducers that we should be looking for as well. Because there are subsectors within each segment of the economy for which those solutions will solve problems that will completely abate the emissions from that segment of the economy. And so we shouldn't discount those as well. So it's big and small, so to speak, decarbonization solutions or climatic solutions, but they apply to different elements, and we shouldn't keep our eyes closed to all of them. I just happen to be one of those people who's looking for the bigger ones.
yeah. I got you. I got you. So the smaller ones are very, very important because they add up, as you're
Oh
you're
yes,
pointing out, right? So they need to
absolutely.
do those. But what you're saying and what we were discussing in the beginning is that the urgency level just gets higher and higher as the time ticks by, right? And right now the urgency
Absolutely.
level's pretty high.
It really is. I mean, we were joking about it a little bit at the beginning, but you think about forest fires, you think about floods, you think about drought, you think about food insecurity, you think about refugee crises that we're seeing all over the world, much of it driven by climate change and insecurity. You can't eat and you can't have water. You're going to leave that region. Where do you go? So we're seeing a lot of these challenges, and they are a result of what's happening with our challenged climate. Um, I could certainly go on about each and every one of them, but just to talk about it, I'll give you one more piece.
Okay.
So if you look at the curve that has been provided by the IPCC, that's the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they're the ones who really put out the most, I think, some of the most credible information about the total volume of carbon in our economy. If you look, every time they update that report every couple of years, it's like we're moving that graph out. So we have to start even higher. It gets harder and harder the longer we wait, because we have waited so long that the total volume of carbon gets greater and greater. So we have a huge need the earlier we move, the cheaper it is as well. So for me, the law of economic gravity sort of has already taken shape, and which is why we're seeing so much action here. The question is, are we investing in the right things?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a those are solid questions. When we get so let's talk about the different. Can we get into some of the technologies and such that you're investing in right
Yeah,
now, and kind of your
sure.
opinions on those? Because there's a ton of different solutions, and I'd like to understand a little bit of what you see as and in your space, what are considered to be those like that you really have a strong confidence in as far as reaching that gigaton status or gigacorn. I'm sorry.
Gigacorn status. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a little preface and then I'll get directly into the portfolio. So the first is there's something I call the 3 R's of decarbonization. And those are the 3 modes by which a technology delivers decarbonization. So it's reduce, replace, and remove. So reduction technologies tend to be those that make processes more efficient, right? Where you've got replacement, that's the wholesale replacement of an existing technology with something that is not emitting. And the third being reduction is what you're actually doing, removal is what you're actually doing to pull those legacy emissions out of the atmosphere. So it's kind of like you're slowing emissions with the first one, you're stopping emissions with the second one, and then you're reversing the emissions that are already out there with the third. Yeah. So we characterize investments in that light at first and all the pathways that decarbonization can be achieved. But what's also super important is something that I don't think gets enough attention, which is this notion of what makes a decarbonization technology so powerful. It's 3 things to me. It has to be permanent, scalable, and measurable. That is, the decarbonization that's delivered, for example, a removal, you have to know that it's actually going to be removed for a long time. I mean, we're talking more than 100 years, more than 1,000 years, no longer floating around the atmosphere.
Yeah.
The second, in terms of that notion of scalability, it has to be cost effective. It has to be something that we have the resources financially as well as tactile, like the actual physical resources, to build those systems and to ensure that it can distribute throughout the economy fast enough and great enough at a reasonable price. And the third is measurable. That is, we have to have a system, like the decarbonization has to actually be something that you can measure. If you can't, then again, we're using our intuition. And as wonderful as human intuition is in so many ways, it's often wrong when we're actually trying to measure things. So those 3 things are really important when you're qualifying the quality of a climate tech's decarbonization. And the other is those pathways, those 3 R's, the 3 R's of decarbonization. So I mentioned that because I'll walk you through a couple of our investments. One, I spend a lot of time on is called Groundwork BioAg, which to me does a great job meeting that quality profile. So essentially, Groundwork BioAg has developed, it's a fungus company. There's a fungus called mycorrhiza that has been known for 40, 50 years, that when you sow your seeds with it, when you coat your seeds, you inoculate your seeds with it, and then you sow them, so you plant them, you grow taller crops that are more resilient to drought and floods. You need less fertilizer, certainly less phosphorus, you can use less water, and so on and so forth, and still have these terrific yields. The challenge, though, has been cultivating the mycorrhizal spores was really, really difficult and very, very expensive. And so you had very few crops that would actually use it. So what this company figured out how to do is how to cultivate it at an incredibly high concentration and very low cost. Now making it available to virtually any farmer the world over who wants the benefits of this mycorrhizal spore. It's called Rutella. So what was really amazing to us when we saw this technology was not just the fact that we are going to increase food security, which is incredibly important and important to us, but also mycorrhizal spores are the main pathway of carbon into the soil. So essentially, it's this symbiotic relationship. As the plant grows and conducts photosynthesis, like let's say corn, it passes those photosynthates down into the mycorrhiza, the spores that have grown underground and integrated with the root network, while the mycorrhizal spores are passing up all the nutrients that a plant would need to grow at its best.
Oh, wow.
So all of those photosynthetes, which contain a tremendous amount of carbon, travel down into the soil and become mineralized and permanently deposited in the soil, sequestering a tremendous amount of carbon. We're seeing about 1 to 4 tons of carbon sequestered per acre right now, which is, to put it in context, the the best performing carbon programs right now that tend to be things like cover cropping and no-till farming are seeing about zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.4 tons per acre. So we're talking about a 10 to 40x increase in the amount of carbon being naturally sequestered because we're restoring the mycorrhizal root network under the ground. Maybe that was too much detail, but I find it pretty
No, it's
exciting.
cool, but it begs a lot of questions. So, I mean, is this the mycorrhizal spores? I mean, can I throw that on my lawn instead of a bunch of nitrates and stuff like that, and get a better lawn and help the environment in a better way? I mean, this is a legitimate question. If this works on crops and things that grow and utilize photosynthesis, why wouldn't we be throwing this all over lawns everywhere and increasing the carbon sequestration just through, having a beautiful lawn?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question, and believe me, we've had those discussions as well. Um, the I wish I was the expert, but I'm not the
Yeah,
expert. But here's what I'll
gotcha.
tell you is that when you were first planting your like laying down the sod and
Yeah.
or planting the seed, that would be the time to do it.
Okay.
I
I can't
don't
throw
know
it
if you
over
can
top of
just
it when it's wet and expect it to kill weeds and grow my grass
no, because
really well.
I believe it needs to actually be embedded and
Yeah,
inoculated
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
species
I
itself.
get
So, but again, I'm not quite. I should be more expert perhaps, but it is a great question, and it's one that we've asked. One of the things I said is if there's a massive fire like we had up here in Canada last year, which was
Yeah,
outrageous, and, Jasper just burned down last week. It's a horrible tragedy. The
right.
question I sort of thought was, can we take Rutella and spread it all over, and that will help inoculate but we didn't really dive deep enough into whether that was actually something that
So it's
would be
still a fairly
viable.
nascent. It's still a fairly nascent technology. They're still discovering ways to use it and looking for ways to use it more.
From a crop perspective, no, not at all.
Okay.
It's a very well used. It's been applied on I think over 6 million acres so far. So it's starting to certainly grow. No pun intended. And crop yield improvements are quite impressive. The carbon sequestration has been very impressive. They've developed as well a carbon program called Rutella Carbon, in which farmers can subscribe, and they make additional revenue per acre based on the carbon that they sequester. It's quite attractive, and there's a long lineup of people who want to sign up for the program, which is very exciting, and I hope more and more people do all over the world. So that's an
That,
example of a highly scalable, measurable, and permanent solution.
yeah, it's fantastic too because my mind also goes to you know um, technologies and companies that utilize agricultural products for like biodiesels or
Mm-hmm.
for construction materials like Hemspan over in the UK that
Mm-hmm.
is making insulation materials, et cetera, and building materials out of hemp, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
and they use that from a crop rotation perspective as well. And a lot of times when you start getting into these different things, you're 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 you can negatively impact carbon sequestration by utilizing those crops at times, but you can also start, you know, negatively impacting food production and or production for, uh, raising cattle, et cetera, and that type of stuff, right? So I would imagine this would be a solution for some of the negative impacts in those others that would be fantastic solutions, but they have a negative impact other ways. So
It can be. So, it's funny. I have what we examine as well whenever we look at a technology is what we call the co-benefits and risks, right?
yeah,
So, groundwork, for example, terrific co-benefit is you're feeding more people, you're using less fertilizer, you're using less water, um, among other co-benefits, right? Some other technologies have co-risks associated with them, right? And
yeah.
so you have to, or what some people just say, the unintended consequence. Um, and so you need to balance out the positives and the negatives, but we certainly look to ensure that as best we can, that there are as few of those as possible. In our portfolio, I would say we don't have any that present any significant risks.
I got you. I got you. So Rutella, do you get into fuel production? What are your thoughts on the different fuels? I mean, kind of going back to I mean, energy is a massive need, right? So, and obviously, I mean, food and you need energy, and maybe a house to
Yeah.
sleep in, right? And we're also working on different EVs and so on that require
Mhm.
energy, and they require clean energy, and then you have fuels like
Yeah.
hydrogen, but there's more than a rainbow of colors of hydrogen.
Mhm.
White, I think, is like the latest to be the best colored hydrogen is white. I think now that's just straight out of the earth, has zero impact or something. But are there technologies in there that you got to be interested in and be involved in that more than just the smart idle, right? Like the production of biofuels, et
Idle
cetera.
smarts, yeah.
Yeah, or idle
So
smart. Yeah,
we've looked at a number of biofuels. We've looked at sustainable aviation fuels. We looked at a few of these, and but we haven't made any investments in them yet. Listen, those we need combustible fuels for the
yeah.
foreseeable future, and to pretend we don't is crazy. I think our entire economy is built around it, and so what we need to work with and towards is the most orderly transition we can make in order to ensure nobody is left behind. And it will be difficult. Change always comes with challenges. Um, there are some that I've seen though that I can very quickly, I quickly kind of dismiss, perhaps just because I feel a little purist on it. So, for example, there are technologies that capture um, carbon from the air, and then they, instead of sequestering that carbon, they transition that carbon into what they're calling, a sustainable aviation fuel or carbon neutral fuels, and so on. And that's what they are. They're neutral at best. They are neutral. Um, as I think about this and the work that we do is we're trying to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere and or stop and slow the emissions. If you are constantly just recycling existing carbon, we're not going to make any progress. So the idea is, how do we characterize, if we were able to characterize a fuel as one of those three R's, sustainable aviation fuels like that, whether it's from ethanol from corn crops and so on, those tend to fall into the reduction category. So they're a little bit more energy efficient to produce than
Mm-hmm.
perhaps fossil fuels. But um, so it's tough for me to lean in that hard. I'm happy to see other people continue to do it, but I find it a little bit more challenging for me because I see other opportunities that deliver so much decarbonization much faster than something like a sustainable aviation fuel. But like I said, there is a need for it. So I
Yeah,
appreciate why
it's a
people
part. It's a
are
part of
investing
the
in it.
solution. It's a part of the solution, right? I mean, because you're not emitting more into the atmosphere. If other people are reducing the amount in there that is being produced, and you're just recycling what is there, then I mean, neutral is better than being carbon positive, right?
100%. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I agree with you. Like I said, it's just not where I find myself spending that much time. Though I continue to look at them as they come across our desk, I haven't found one that I think is compelling enough.
Gotcha. So, do you look at other energy production methods like wind, solar?
It's funny you say that. When it comes to wind and solar, geothermal, and so on, we tend to look at the enabling technologies that make those better, more efficient, more readily deployable. Um, a big wind farm or a solar farm, that tends to be the purview of large institutional investors with hundreds of billions of dollars under their belts who are satisfied with a 6 to 7% return on, with a low risk profile. Um,
Yeah,
as a growth investor, somebody who's looking for commercial technologies that are ready to really hit that inflection curve
yeah.
of growth and potential, those tend to be outside of our scope. So again, we'll look at technologies that can that can enhance. So here's a good example. So we are
Okay.
invested in Line Vision. Line Vision is a technology or a company that has invented something called dynamic line rating. Essentially, it's lasers in a box that a utility applies to the electric pole, and that monitors temperature, pressure, line sag, you name it, all the conditions that allow you to determine in real time how much current can I pass through here, this line at any given point. What we see is, so utilities typically run about 50 to 55% of the capacity of their lines, of the rated capacity of their lines. And the reason is because if they run too much, then the lines can overheat, they can sag, they can spark forest fires, they can fail. This is a huge issue. And so they are conservative in nature, the utility operators, and that makes a lot of sense. But it's made based on a macro view of how, of the environmental conditions around these lines. But if you know what those conditions are at any given point, you can actually bring on more capacity. So what we saw was a technology that could unlock up to 40% more capacity on our existing grid. Now you think about the fact that we're talking about the electrification of the economy. Well, what do we need more of? We don't need just more generation. Of course we do. We also need the ability to move that energy, that electricity from place to place. So this enhances it. So by increasing the capacity of the existing grid by up to 40%, we can bring on all of those renewable energy projects that are waiting for interconnectivity immediately, helping to lower the carbon intensity of the grid much, much faster. So those are the types of technologies that we look at and we think are incredibly powerful tools of enabling the decarbonization of the economy and are deeply connected to electricity and energy.
Like advanced battery technology, that type of stuff. I got you. Is recycling part of that as well? Because I study this stuff quite a bit, and reading about different technologies in a new way to, and I forget what the name of the process is, but a new way to a 98% efficient recycling of spent EV batteries, right? Through this electrification or instant magnetizing of, and I forget what I forget what it was called, but I was just reading it like 2 weeks ago, right? It was really interesting how they just surge it with power, and then through this magnetic process, it's a 98% recovery rate of all the rare earth minerals that are coming out of that battery, which is fantastic, right? I mean, if you can take those things and then reuse them to make new batteries, that's a heck of a carbon reduction, right? Instead of mining and
it certainly is. It certainly is, and there's a few companies working on it. I think one is Redwood, and the other one, actually out of Canada, called Six Materials, are doing that type of work. And of course, we're talking about what appears to be a much more energy and hopefully cost efficient way of recovering all those materials so that they can be reused and repurposed and recycled. So to your question, absolutely recycling and waste management, if you will, or I prefer to call it resource management, is a huge enabler of significant decarbonization. And really, again, we're talking about the reduction. It is pretty amazing the number of conversations that I have. It tends to be much easier for people to wrap their heads around reduction, right? Getting more efficient. And we absolutely have to and need to. I want to see more of the replacement and the removal technologies that are available at scale. There's more zero emitting technologies, more removal technologies to pull down those legacy emissions, because we are at a point where the atmospheric concentration of carbon is above 420 parts per million. When pre-industrial was less than 280 parts per million. We have a lot of carbon we need to remove from the atmosphere, or let's say even enable nature to do that more quickly, so we can stabilize our climate. I worry about the fact that This has been the hottest 2 months in human history, as far as we recorded human history, I should say.
Sure. Right.
I worry about how early the hurricane season has already started this year. I worry about the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, Jasper just burned down. That last year, the single largest source of emissions from Canada was forest fires. That the year before that, the single largest emission sources from California was forest fires. Before that, the single largest emissions from Australia, forest fires. Before that, Greece, and over and over and over. And these are the acceleration of natural processes because we have upset the balance of our atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide. And because of this, we are presented with an opportunity to help stabilize our climate and affect this transformation, this economic transformation that I call the decarbonization of everything. It is the fifth evolution of our economy. And there will be more opportunity to profit and bring more people out of poverty than ever with this transformation.
So I was writing that down. The fifth evolution of our economy.
Yeah. Well,
I wrote it down, and as you were saying that, I was thinking, okay, listen, we're nearing the end of this podcast, anyways, and I don't think I could ask you the question of what thoughts do you want to leave, and you would say anything as
brevity has never been my strong suit. I'm sorry.
That was absolutely fantastic what you just said, and I want to leave this episode right there. We're 46 minutes into it. It's been tremendous, and that was a great summation of what you're trying to do. And I was about to ask you what do you want to leave the audience with, and I can't think of anything better than that, unless you can top yourself.
No, I don't think so.
That was.
But I'll leave the audience with this: is that I'm actually I've been writing a book over the last couple of years, and hopefully it'll be out before the end of the year, which I share a lot of these philosophies and this work, and it's really it's called the Gigacorn Hunter, and it's 7 principles for a climate investor. And so if you're interested in learning how to do this and how you can become part of this Gigacorn hunting army, you can pick up the book.
Oh, it's already out.
No. When it comes out, hopefully before the end of this year.
Oh, okay. Is it on pre-order yet or anything like that?
I haven't put it up yet, but
no. But it's called the Gigacorn Hunter.
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Where do people go and monitor to find out when it's going to come out?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'll have to ask my publisher.
Look up Nelson A. Switzer on on LinkedIn and follow him. How about that? Because
sure, that's a great way. I'll make sure. I'll definitely announce it on LinkedIn.
I would think you would. I would suggest you do. I'll send you a bill for that marketing suggestion later.
Appreciate it. I'll be waiting.
Yeah. Checks in the mail. Nelson, I appreciate it. This was really a good one, and we're going to have to talk more. These are one of these episodes or one of these partnerships or relationships where we're going to have to do updates in where your investments
sure.
are and where you see things going. You've got your finger and pulse on what is going on in carbon reduction and sequestration, et cetera. And so we got to do some regular updates. So
I'd be happy to.
Fantastic. I love it. So check out Nelson on LinkedIn. Do you have anything else? Do you use an X? Are you putting out regular information anywhere else where people or businesses or entrepreneurs going, I could be a Gigacorn? Where should they be?
Yeah, come visit our website. It's climateic.com. So climateic.com. That's climateinnovationcapital.com. If you've got an opportunity you want us to take a look at, scroll to the bottom. You can submit your pitch and we'll take a look. Learn more about what we're doing and the news in the world.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Nelson. And thank everybody for downloading and tuning into the Sustainiacs. We'll see you next time. Peace and love.